to address this and to think creatively about ways that we can address this, the issue of racism, and respond in a very kind of gospel-focused way as believers and as ministers in the church. And so this afternoon, we are so grateful that Gloria Purvis, that Ms. Purvis could join us for this conversation. And just a brief way of introduction to Gloria, for those of you that don't know. Gloria is a graduate of Cornell University. She has spent a considerable amount of time working with the Black Catholic Congress. Gloria has been a kind of both in print and on television and on radio, talking about a variety of different issues in the church, and then certainly in national conversations as well. Everything from PBS to New York Times to the Washington Post, and a lot of notoriety from her work at EWTN on the with the radio show Morning Glory. Very recently, Gloria was named the Our Catholic Visitor Person of the Year 2020 for her work in the church again, and the ministry that she is committed to. So welcome, Gloria, to our town hall meeting here this afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. It's a privilege to be with you all today and to engage in this very, very important conversation. And I think the church needs more of it. And we need to be very frank about it when we have these conversations. Too often, I think the reason we don't make a lot of progress is that we're more concerned about hurting the wrong people's feelings instead of addressing the injustice and actually the sin of racism, that it imperils souls. And that is the reason why we are concerned as Catholics about it.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, Gloria. Rather than worrying about offending people, the importance of addressing and confronting the realities of the sin of racism in our church. We've had a conversation before, Gloria, and we talked about the ways in which personal aspects or individual aspects of racism are interwoven into larger systemic forms of racism. And I feel like that for so many people, especially people in the church, they can acknowledge individual, forms of racism, but they have difficulty thinking about processing, understanding systemic racism when it gets to from the individual level to the larger kind of social institutional level.
Well, Father, I would say people don't believe systemic racism is a real thing. And they think unless you're Bull Connor, you're not racist. So even having people understand what racism is, I try to help people say that when I'm talking about racism, I'm talking about the attitudes, practices, customs, cultural representations, laws, and systems that condition society to believe that only some people of a particular race are worthy of dignity and respect, and others are inferior. And as a result of these beliefs and corresponding actions, the human flourishing of the targeted group is undercut. Now, let me give you an example. So you said in my bio that I went to Cornell University. It's an Ivy League school. And at one point in my career, having had a lot of experience, I applied for this. Really, it was an executive level job at a very large place. I won't say the name of it. And they looked through the resumes and all that stuff, and they called me in for an interview with like the person that was the top of this division. And then it was a junior level person that would be reporting to me if I had taken the job. So in the course of the job, the senior person was describing, what they do in the division and this and that and the other, and then telling me about this junior person. And then she let the junior person ask me some questions. And they were two white women. The first question your junior person asked me was if I could read. If I could read. And so I looked at the senior level person to see, is she going to say anything about this? And I just, and at that moment, I was like, I'm not working here. I'm simply not going to work. This is a failure of leadership on her part. Clearly, they have some negative assumptions about me, even though I must be able to read if I was able to create this resume and have all the experience that I have and whatnot. And I didn't even dignify the question. I can't remember what I said to her, but it is because of systemic racism. In other words, the attitudes about Black competence, even if you have a degree, even if you have experience, could be called into question by a junior person who, I started to ask her, can you read, honey? Because you did you not look through anything about, but I didn't do that because that's another thing. We are only allowed a certain kind of response, and otherwise, if not, you'll be deemed an unprofessional, angry Black woman. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So the way that racism plays in off the bat, doubting my competence, whereas anybody else similarly situated, I can guarantee you, of another race, particularly if I were a white woman or white man with my kind of credentials and experience, that would have been just an unthought of question. It just would have been ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But the fact that this junior person asked it and the senior person didn't say, okay, that's a silly question or something, and chew her out later. So, what kind of organization are you running? And how, it just said a lot to me about the culture and value and lack of leadership in the place. And also the fact that they saw nothing wrong with it. And this was like in 2009. So we're not talking a long time ago. And I'm not that old that it'd be in the 60s. No shade to people who would have been a certain age in the 60s, whatever. My point is that even today, I am not afforded by my education and experience that somebody else would be, like someone white, it would just be assumed that they had this level of competence. Otherwise, how could they have made it this far in a senior level position to be interviewed? That's just a minor example. Right. Another example was when I was in high school. I went to a high school. See, most of the Catholic schools in Charleston below the high school age were segregated. Not by law, just by custom, really. So I went to an all-Black Catholic school from 1st to 8th grade, excellent education. I tested into honors for the one Catholic high school that was in Charleston, South Carolina. And of course, that's where all the kids from the feeder schools went. So it's Black and white. But in the honors program, it was only me and 2 other Black girls. And we were seated alphabetically. So they were on the other side of the classroom. And I knew them because we went to the same school. Didn't know any of the other white children or anything like that. And the teacher for the class didn't know anybody. But what he did is he was trying to make a point by doing some kind of blind testing, and you wouldn't know who was what. And turns out me and the 2 Black girls had the highest scores. And when he realized that, it just sort of, not in a positive way, but it just sort of changed him, but not in a positive way, because it dispelled it. You would think it would have dispelled his biases, but it just made him more determined to say some of the most racist things you can imagine in class, like to defend slavery, how the slaves were treated well. And then he would say words like indefatigable. And he says, does anybody know what that means? And I would raise my hand, the only person that would, and I would explain, because I was just like, well, I understood what the word meant, and I explained it to him, and it made him angry instead of happy. And then I had that same experience at this same high school. And so in other words, he doubted our ability, the Black students being the other 2, he doubted our ability to belong in this honors level class. And so to prove it, he did this test where we were randomly assigned numbers, and he didn't know who was who. And then he graded everything. And then he called out the numbers. And when he saw who was coming to pick those numbers with the grade, he was not happy about it. And then further, another experience I had in the same Catholic high schools, I'd run for senior class president, and I won. And then the administrator over it said, the vote is too close. We have to have another, election, more voting. So I won the second voting. And even according to the guidelines for the elections, the second election was just a simple vote. If you won by one, you won. She broke the rules and said, no, it's still too close. So I just happened to be telling this to one of the white students in my class, like, gosh, I don't understand this. And what she did is she went and got all the quote white troublemakers and they all voted for me. And so the third thing, it was like a landslide. And it was really kind of funny, that happened. But this woman in her position of power wanted to ensure that I did not get senior class president. So then after and these are just examples, they're mild examples, but you understand what could have happened if she had gotten her way. And then once I was elected senior class president as a rising junior, when we were getting our class rings, the gentleman from the class ring company came and I had to stand up and announce all this stuff. And when he said to her, where's the senior class president? And he pointed at this little old Black girl sitting there. He looked at her and she says, I know these children are kind of different now. Right in front of me. And this same woman, I realized I could not go to her to write my college. You need to get references from teachers and administrators. So I went to the teachers that knew me, that I had a good relationship with, and I had them write my, references for my applications. And she was furious that I did that I circumvented her. And I'd gotten into Cornell, without her assistance. Anyhow, she said, why didn't you come to me? You're supposed to come to me. The process is you're supposed to come to the guidance counselor. And I said, in my 4 years here, even though I'd gotten the highest scores on the SAT and I'd done all these achievements, this is the first time you've ever met with me to tell me that I'm supposed to have you write my recommendation for college. You don't know me. She was furious. She was furious because I did evade the process because I thought this is crazy. Then after I got accepted to Cornell, she called all around the state of South Carolina to get me a full scholarship at a college in the state to try to convince me not to go to Cornell University. I ignored her because this woman didn't have my interests. My interests were not, in fact, she didn't have any interest in any of the Black students because there's an ongoing joke that she was a crusher of dreams for Black children. We even talked about that well after high school. And so you can see where people in positions to be fair and do the right thing, if they don't have the right disposition and in fact have an animus toward Black people and will not, even in the face of proven Black excellence, support it, that's a problem.
Right.
And I would like to tell you that those kinds of experiences were rare in my life, but it's just the opposite. Just the opposite, very common. And in fact, I found people have been more angry when they find out that I'm qualified, more angry when they find out how I've grown up. That yes, I'm from a 2-parent household. I was a debutante. I speak more than one language. I've lived internationally. It enrages people as if I shouldn't have been able to have done those things because it didn't fit in their idea of what a Black person was supposed to be able to do. And particularly in reference to themselves, if they didn't feel as accomplished, they took just who I am as an insult. But again, that's because of their own social conditioning to believe that Black people should not operate outside this predefined box, which they think they have the right to draw. And if I didn't want to play inside the box, it was like, just people being petty and punitive and trying to undercut you on your job and things like that. But you just have to learn how to deal with it. But not everybody all the time has the stamina or desire, to put up with that kind of stuff. Sometimes people are like, I'm leaving, I'm getting another job, getting anything just to get out of here. And sometimes people can't,
The phrase that you said, Gloria, kind of stuck with me, that doubting your ability to belong. And I wonder if you could say something about, because I know we talked about this the other day a little bit about how that happens in the church. And you spoke about these, different situations. Certainly your younger sisters, right, down in the South at the college, and it's that question of belonging. Because I think while some people may say, "Oh, these are just minor little things," I don't think so. And when and if it's accumulative, then it can cause a wholesale sense of rejection or alienation, to me, which is a grave sin.
Yes.
So Could you say more about maybe that doubting your ability to belong in the
so
church?
I knew these two wonderful young African-American women I met. I do a lot of speaking across the country. And I was in a particular diocese in the South, which will remain unnamed. And after I gave a talk for the diocese, everywhere I go, I say, if there's a Black Catholic community, I want to have time with them. So that evening we had a mass there, and they hosted a little dinner for me afterwards where I talked with them. And these two beautiful young women, oh gosh, just incredible young women. And was around 2019. So not long ago, they were telling me of their experience on the campus, non-Catholic campus, at the university where they went in that particular state, and their experience with the Newman Center. Now, these girls were on fire for the faith. They believed the teachings of the church and the beauty of what we as Catholics profess. So they had gone around and invited all these African-American students, anybody they could find, to come to the Newman Center so they could talk to them about Catholicism. And they had a packed house of all these African-American young women and young men who were not necessarily Catholic. And before the night was over, this one young man says to them, you talk about the universality of your faith, but based on everything I see in here, the saints you have on the wall, your cross, look like just white people in heaven. So how is it that your faith is so universal? And they were like, good point, thank you. So they went to the chaplain for the Newman Club and said, hey, we'd like to put up pictures of St. Josephine Bakhita, Our Lady Guadalupe, and St. Martin de Porres. And his response to them was, no. And she says, well, we had this experience, blah, blah, blah. He says they should be able to see themselves in the white saints. We are not going to put that up here because that's too political. Declared saints of the church, the Blessed Mother who had appeared in Mexico, to say to these young women that this was too political and that you and all these other people need to see yourselves in the white saints. Ridiculous. Never once him thinking, yeah, and these white children here need to be able to see themselves in these Black saints and the Blessed Mother, And they also told me that every time they were there at the Newman Center, the white students would come in either with hostile glances or confused glances, like, why are you here? Don't you know you're not supposed to be here? I had some cards mailed to them for Black Catholic History Month of the 6 African Americans on the path to Sainthood. I had stacks of prayer cards mailed to the priest there with their attention. He hid the box. They found it. They put the stack of things out. And every time they came back in, the prayer cards they had out were mysteriously gone someplace. So you talk about a feeling of not belonging, people not wanting you to be there. And then the hostility that they faced. And then it became so bad, they were just like, we need to get community here. But they never gave up on the faith. And I reminded them, I said, you pay tuition there. That Newman Center is there for you, and you use it as much as you want. I was like, don't let other people make you feel like you need their permission to belong to the faith. However, I will say this, I talked to them quite a bit, and I really encouraged them to build their own community down there, because clearly they weren't getting it from the fellow Catholics who were not Black on campus. The white Catholics certainly weren't getting it from the chaplain. So, and they also were worried. They were like, we have to graduate from here. And they realized that it could perhaps, if they push things too much, that perhaps
it's real windy.
Graduation could be in trouble.
There's something about that, Gloria, that when we talk about, race, and we talk about identity, and the way that these young women address the issue in their local ministry there on campus, and because I hear this too, people will respond, well, don't make this political. They conflate it as immediately being something political rather than something human.
Okay.
Right? It's an insult. It's a way to not deal with their own discomfort. It's seeing representations of holiness that don't look like them. And I often believe a lot of the problem is from, again, racist social conditioning that people even aren't aware of. I can't tell you how many times I've had a picture on social media of a Black Jesus or a Black Blessed Mother.
Gloria, get over here and eat.
I think, can somebody mute their
Yeah, I think I got it.
Like, keep
it's
talking.
good. I got it, I think.
Okay. And so the idea of historical representation, like that's the only time I ever hear people push back on a depiction of Jesus or Mary. That's not historically accurate. Why are you doing this? I had one news organization that claims themselves as a pro-life news organization on social media call me a liar because they were reacting negatively to an artistic representation of Jesus that was Black. And what I find so interesting about that is, I don't know if any of you have gone to the National Shrine here in DC, but when you walk in, one of my girlfriends commented, she said, oh, look, they got a beach Barbican Jesus. You know, the big blonde hair, blue eyes, you know, muscle, you know, we just laughed because I was like, you know, I never thought of that. But at the same time, we didn't reject the image as not being Jesus because we realized what it represented. But it occurred to me that too often our white brothers and sisters who claim they want historical representation and accuracy in depictions of Jesus only do that when it's a Black Jesus. That beach Barbican Jesus is fine. Your Italian looking Jesus is fine. The German looking Jesus is fine. You know, all of those other Jesus is fine. But you make it a Black Jesus, that's not historically accurate. That's not what they look like. And, you know, it's just ridiculous. I even had people tell me that, you know, that's politicizing it. And I was like, why is this political? But all these ahistorical white Jesuses aren't. I said, you know, what is it that bothers you about it? Oh, I'm not bothered. I just think we need to be, you know, historically accurate. I said, take your complaint to the National Shrine then, because they got plenty of white Jesus over there that doesn't look like what he would have looked like coming from where he came from. I was like, so until you take issue with that and take issue with, you know, the Divine Mercy priests that have the Divine Mercy images that, you know, have been changed to look, you know, Nordic or whatever, till you take it to them. You know, leave me alone, because you won't even see that many Black Jesuses in the church. I said, I think for the most part, you walk in any Catholic church in America, 9 times out of 10, you're going to see a white Jesus and a white Mary that doesn't look like what they look like, you know, if you were being historically accurate. But see, there's never complaint until it's equated with Blackness. And again, I think that's because our society has been conditioned from the earliest times when we first decided that Black skin could be equated with perpetual slavery, that therefore there's something not good. In fact, beyond not good, there's something criminal, there's something promiscuous, there's something unholy, animalistic, you know, untrustworthy about Black skin. And all that is wrapped up in societies through conditioning. And maybe people aren't even aware of it until they see a cross with a African corpus on it, a Black Jesus on it, that they have this reaction. And maybe it awakens in them like, why do I feel that way? And I would say probably because it's a lot of the social conditioning that we haven't really taken the time to fight, you know, for centuries, not adequately anyway. And I believe it's a spiritual thing as well. I mean, the fact in the church that Black men were just out of pocket, deemed unfit, unable to be priests. Same thing with Black women in terms of being able to be religious. We have some deep-seated issues. Instead of us being church to the United States and changing the, you know, the country, in fact, the very prejudices and hatefulness and racism outside the church made its way into the church and infected us. And I don't really think we've had a sustained, purposeful, decades-long effort to undo this and to address this sin for what it is, a direct attack from the devil to break the bonds of the human family. And we haven't dealt with that adequately in our church yet, but I'm hopeful. With these
have you thought of and I'll bring this to thinking about our, you know, so many of our ministries among the incarcerated and formerly incarcerated, but just on that last point, Gloria, have you over time have you thought of like, I wish the church would do this or do that, and maybe what are some of those?
You know, honestly, if one cathedral, just one, in these United States of America had an African corpus over their altar, I think that would do so much in terms of maybe undo, like, I think we almost need like a psychological exorcism, to undo this garbled conditioning and thinking about what holiness looks like, and I think that actually would be a big risk. I can't think of any cathedral anywhere that if they did that, that there wouldn't be some kind of uprising among the laity, that, oh, you're politicizing and da 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 da, but I wish there was something like that. I also wish we could actually call out and point out examples of racism that are concrete and that are in the church. Because again, I think people don't, unless they're Bull Connor, they don't think it's racism. I've met so many people that looked at what happened to George Floyd, and instead of saying, this is terrible, they're like, well, what did he do? You know what I mean? As if any brother or sister made in image and likeness of God is worthy of that kind of abuse. Just that we would even, instead of saying, oh my gosh, wasn't there a better way to get control? Why did he go so far? It was, well, what did he do? And I thought if that were Reese Witherspoon with her cute little blonde self, they'd be up in arms. You know what I mean? But it was George Floyd. And again, that conditioning to be able to have a high tolerance for Black bodies, Black people being brutalized, I think it is a problem, especially when it's coming from people of faith, people who at any other time would fight for human dignity, protecting life in the womb, protecting life at its end stages, but feeling no discomfort at this clear brutalization of a human being. And so I almost think we needed why that was racism. I mean, a prominent pro-life woman tweeted to the effect like, well, how do you know it was racism? And I was like, it's almost so basic. It was so difficult to like, well, let me help you understand the history of how Black people have been treated in this country, the history of policing, but it's like, how does she not know this? And maybe there needs to be more done in terms of education and in the seminaries too, because I will tell you, I've seen a lot of priests say things publicly that I'm like, how is that not, do people not understand why that is clearly racist, even though he doesn't use a racial slur? I mean, do I really have to explain that? And why should I be the one to explain it? Let other folks get out there and get busy with doing it, and so that's another thing. I'd like to invite my white brothers and sisters to feel empowered to speak to other white people, because guess what? People that already have this kind of conditioning will tend to not listen to my witness the same way they'll listen to yours. Okay, because you are a more trustworthy representative and spokesperson than I could be if they've already have a tendency to discount what Black people say is whining or unrealistic, or they're always complaining and unwilling to, at all converse. And again, because a lot of people are programmed and conditioned to hear legitimate complaints as just Black people whining again. But they can listen to you because you, as a white person, already have a level of they will respect you as a person. And you have that opportunity to say things that they could probably hear, that if I said it, even if I said the same exact words, they wouldn't hear it in the same way if it were coming from you.
Right.
So to encourage people to be able to feel free to do that. Yeah, so those would be some of the things, just some of the smaller things that I think I wish would see happen, and especially changes in the seminary, teaching particular courses about the Black experience and racism in the church, the particular policies that were in the church. But we like to talk about that one bishop that was excommunicating people, here and there, but that was the rarity, not the norm.
Right. Right. I just as a quick kind of example of what you're saying, Gloria, I when I was in seminary, I remember giving a homily on when I was a deacon my last year there, and I referenced a lynching that had taken place not far from where we were. And I got comments afterwards, again, this word political, that I shouldn't have been political, just by talking about racial injustice is somehow politicized, but but it's not seen as maybe there's a kind of some degree of kind of an abstract kind of awareness of it as an element of the teachings of the church, social doctrine of the church, but there's no real a felt sense of the grave threat of racism. And this is why, and I know I shared this with you the other day, I find it very helpful when I talk among seminarians in particular. I teach at seminary and have done some talks at some of the different seminaries in the South. But when you talk about racism as a heresy, the great Henri de Lubac, a great Jesuit cardinal, 20th century theologian, said that, spoke of racism as, yes, a sin, but in his context of anti-Semitism in Europe, he spoke of it as a heresy because it attacks the doctrine of the unity of the human race.
Yes.
And it's sad in a way that it takes putting it in that way for some people to be able to understand that this is a grave and mortal threat to one's faith and to our community.
Yeah, I think that's I love that, saying that it's a heresy. I also look, people, we talk about it in the church, not because we're woke, because that's the latest thing. They want to attack everything is you're just being woke. We talk about this because your sin, your immortal, your life is in jeopardy. You can go to hell for this. That's why we talk about it. And people do go to hell for it. Okay. So this is why we talk about it, to wake people up out of this kind of, oh, that's just leftist garbage, Marxist, I've been called that all the time. And I was like, y'all loved me just a few years ago when I was talking about protecting life in the womb. It was wonderful then, but I stepped out of the approved box for what things a pro-life person, someone who identifies as a pro-life, can talk about. And I'm like, it is because I'm pro-life, because I believe in the dignity of the human person from the womb to the tomb, that it would be ridiculous not to talk about assaults on life in between. No one seemed to want to acknowledge that George Floyd was robbed of a right to a natural death. Right? Nobody wants to talk about that because it didn't fall in the case of, euthanasia or physician-assisted suicide. But what happened to him was he was deprived of a right to a natural death. And I will also say, Father, it's almost like for people that racism is so gray. Like they're like, I know what an abortion looks like and I can point to it, but I just don't know what racism is. And I say, part of that, I think, is the kind of things they imbibe that on a daily basis harden their hearts to understand that Black people are part of their family. We have a common humanity. And if we believe that and understood that, we wouldn't tolerate the kinds of abuses that Black people experience on a regular basis, whether it's interactions with police, whether it's how you're treated by the criminal justice system, whether it's how if you are incarcerated, the conditions of your incarceration, what happens to you after you leave, all of these things, we just would not tolerate it. We would rise up in a revolution and say, because this is somebody I love, this is my family. But we don't do that. And in fact, many times, Father, when I talk about racial justice, it's a sad commentary that a lot of people that might call into, if I'm on a Catholic radio show, will call in. And it's clear that these white Catholics, who are good and faithful Catholics by their own identification, perceive racial justice as necessarily being an attack against white people. And I was like, but do you understand the concept of justice as a Catholic? Justice is just about giving what people are due, not, why do you perceive that as being against white people? And then it always comes down to if it's anything economic, if there's any economic program that maybe will try to improve schools or build small businesses or just you name it. that seems like an abuse to them, and that why are they using money over there? I pay taxes, and then the guy that was on whose show it was says, well, you realize Black people pay taxes too, right? It was, and that was, people were lighting up. It was call after call after call. And that was the consistent theme, was that it takes away from the white community to do anything, uh, that might even be considered economic reparation for the Black community. Now, they're fine to make reparations if it's prayer, because they don't really see that as having any real material negative impact on themselves. But it was just really interesting that they saw the betterment of people who had clearly by law and for centuries had negative intentional things happen to their communities that have lasting impact, because we know sin, the effects of a sin can outlive the person who did it. Yet they were like, well, I didn't own slaves. And I was like, that's when I explained the effect of sin. And I say, and then as a Catholic, how could you say, because you didn't participate in that sin, that you would not want to make repair for that sin? What do you think you're going to say to Christ when you're looking at him and he carried a cross for your sins? That you could say to him, well, I didn't want to do anything for them because I didn't do that sin. It's absurd. It's absurd when you think about who we are and what we believe. And, we make reparation all the time, that for blasphemies against the holy name of Jesus or the Sacred Heart of Jesus. But yet in this case, I don't want to do it. It's a commentary on a deep problem that we have in our church, where we claim we believe about the dignity of the human person. We claim we believe and we understand that we have a common humanity. We're all made in his image and likeness, but to live it, too much has not been done to undo the racist conditioning that in other words, let me just say this, that have made victims of Black people and white people. Nobody ever thinks white people have not been told that, guess what? You are a victim of this evil plan of the devil who planned to divide the human family. This is not who God made you to be either. To be conditioned by this stuff and act on that. That's not who God made you to be. Just like God didn't make us to be considered inferior and treated thusly. It's an attack against both of our human dignities in different ways, but nonetheless an attack. I often don't ever think that white people consider that they themselves are harmed by racism because it conditions them to behave less than who they were made to be in God's image and likeness.
Right. Well, thank you, Gloria, for that. And we're going to kind of shift over to any kind of questions that any of us here in the community here at the town hall might have for Gloria. I encourage you either to feel free to unmute yourself or put yourself, a question in the box here. And especially, as we think about the realities of racism as it affects our ministries, and I see there's one question here talking about how to work on addressing racism or preventing it from entering into the chaplain programs and into Catholic services in the prison. Because, and I've seen this a lot, there's a lot of gangs in prisons. And one of those gangs certainly is also different forms of white supremacists and neo-Nazis as well. And so there's a lot of, as you can imagine, racist activity that happens on the yard. And I've seen it come into some of the programs that I've been involved in, but I'd just like to see if anyone else would like to ask any questions or any thoughts on what Gloria has said, especially as it relates to our ministries among the incarcerated. Actually, here is a question. Sorry, let me read this one to you, Gloria. Without disregarding the gravity and responsibility of white individuals, where have you seen programs, projects, ministries that give you hope for conversion?
That's a good one. I would say in this, since we had seen the murder of George Floyd, I think seeing so many more conversations happening at Georgetown and at Notre Dame, to know that there are people in these institutions that are trying to facilitate the conversations and that there are people who want to listen. I've seen organic groups start to arise where people are like, we got to talk about this. I know private groups on Facebook where women of different races come together because they want to address racism within the church and in the world. And you have a multiracial group of women where it's safe to ask a question. For particularly some of our white sisters might feel embarrassed to ask it anywhere else, but we've created a place where you can ask it without judgment, and we're going to try to help you understand it. And also a place where the women of color, like, okay, for the first 24 hours on this particular post, we just want women of color to respond to it. And then we'll open it up because we want their voices to be heard. That has given me hope. And honestly, I would say the other thing that really gives me hope is I pray. I pray because I don't think I would be able to persevere in this without prayer and a deep belief in the Lord. And, a lot of us don't have access to the sacraments like we used to. But nonetheless, I know that prayer sustains me. And I also have a group of people that I always will text or call, say, hey, pray for me. I'm about to go give a talk, or hey, pray for me. I'm feeling down, or boy, the hate mail is a lot of it today. So pray for me. So that's given me hope, I guess. But I think we need more programs. There simply aren't enough that address this in a specific way. I think the Equal Justice Initiative is great, but it's not necessarily specifically Catholic. I think the Catholic Mobilizing Network, at least what people are trying to do in the conversations they're trying to have and how they're trying to be present and show up is really important. I would like to see, though, more from that part of the church that hasn't necessarily been known for social justice work. There's a dearth there. Even though, to me, how could trying to defend life in the womb and help women in need and help families in need not be considered social justice? That always used to shock me when they'd say, okay, we got a social justice ministry and a pro-life ministry. And I was like, well, aren't they the same? Aren't they the same thing? So if I could see more over there, because too often, and I will say as someone that's worked, for a long time in pro-life movement, too often there is a talk of racism, but it's only in the case of abortion. It doesn't exist anywhere else. And it's always talked about in a way that I will tell you, in terms of talking to other Black people, it seems like that seems like it's merely political. Like, that's the only time you can see racism. Really? How could you not have seen when Rodney King got, stomped, that wasn't racism? How could you not see what happened to Ahmaud Arbery, the young man that was going through an unfinished house in his Georgia neighborhood and then went for a jog. And then some people in the neighborhood just thought he must have committed a crime and then chased him down and were shocked that he wouldn't stop, given the history of Georgia and Black people and Black men, and were shocked that he would not stop to their commands, as if they had a right to command a private citizen to yield to them and answer their questions. And then when they produced guns and he tried to defend himself, they killed him. And the response was that, he should have just stopped and listened to us and taken our question. Just we have a lot to do, when I think about that.
You speak of the blindness.
Commented on that, frankly. So anyway, I wish there were more conversations in that traditionally known as pro-life area to help people better understand what racism is outside of the abortion equation.
I was wondering if anyone, with the 10 minutes that we have left here with Gloria, if anyone had any, maybe either a brief story or an experience in prison ministry of encountering both racism and racial healing as well. If I don't know, because prison is such a melting pot, and you're faced with really kind of on the surface, everything comes up to the surface with all of our societal ills in prison, and you're in such close proximity. I don't know if anyone has a story or an experience of confronting racism, encountering it, but also seeing moments of racial healing as well.
Well, maybe I can ask this. Has anybody felt like they were in a position that they were able to advocate for somebody, that normally wouldn't be heard, because they just weren't respected because of their race, but maybe you were able to step in and you were able to advocate in a way that that person wouldn't, because they simply would not have been heard? Maybe somebody has a story like that. Maybe it didn't even happen in the jail. Maybe you were having to advocate in some way within your parish or in some other way for people who typically have been on the margins or ignored. Maybe there's something there. I don't know.
Hi, this is Barbara Sella from the Wisconsin Catholic Conference. First of all, Gloria, I've been following you for a number of years. You are a treasure in our church, remarkable. Just thank you. I'm so sorry for all that you have endured, but I thank you for the courage to speak up, because it must not be easy to recount, past injustices. And just thank you, thank you, thank you. So we, after George Floyd's death, I approached our pastor to see if we could get in our parish a group of people to talk about racism. And, he agreed. So, and then we had a change in pastors, and the young pastor agreed as well. So we've been meeting since August. We have the most diverse parish in the Diocese of Madison. We've been meeting since August. We call ourselves Open Wide Our Hearts.
Yeah.
And we've done a number of things, prayers. We showed hidden figures, let the parish, join in. We're going to do things on promoting the 5 or 6 Africans on their way to sainthood. Anyway, we're just trying to figure out on a yearly basis, at different times of the year, what can we do? We're putting up icons of saints of all different races. We are also in our school putting up images of Mary from everywhere from Rwandan Mary, that there's an apparition there. Obviously Our Lady of Guadalupe. Anyway, trying to, so that the children and the adults can see these different, images. And it's just been an amazing journey with some of our African-American, parishioners. These are small things. We have no illusions, but we're all, super committed, because we are a universal church and we haven't lived up to that. And we lose so much when we shut people out. So I'll stop talking. Thank you for everything you do.
Let me say this. If you do movies, there's a book called Slavery by Another Name by Douglas A. Blackman, Pulitzer Prize winning book. Outstanding. They also made a documentary out of it. And some people prefer to watch rather than read a book. And so to maybe show that documentary, I think PBS put it out. There's another series that's rather old, but it's called Eyes on the Prize. And I think it helps walk people through the civil rights movement and to see, some of these things and to witness it and understand it. And then also to show some of the good things they have. Like there's a series, I think, called The African Americans by Professor PBS, to show those as well. Because what I found is that people legitimately have no idea of the bad things that have happened. They think, oh, there was a law passed that fixed it. But then you have to see the history of how the law was circumvented on purpose by people who did not want to accept that Black people are now free, or the people did not want to accept that Black people could now vote, or people didn't want to accept that Black people could buy a house and live wherever they wanted. And so to show these documentaries would be helpful. I can't remember the name of there was a book written about how the federal government helped create segregation on purpose.
Yep.
And to show these things and read these things, because I think a lot of times a part of our education is that we're not very educated on the things that have happened on purpose in this country that have created the sort of situation that we're in today. And so when people start to see that, I think it gives them a context and also maybe even a desire and also to feel like they have some ownership and are able to help make positive change. So I think that those kinds of things are great. And I'm glad you all are doing what you're doing, Barbara. That's fantastic. Thank you. That's great. And I'll send you a link, Father, a list rather of some of the things that I mentioned, some of the resources I mentioned in case, you want to share it among people. I have a thing about shows the history of policing, that it arose out of early slave patrols. And I got this from the Law Enforcement Museum. And the purpose of the early slave patrols were to watch, surveil the Black community, and to also use terror, physical terror and torture and abuse to keep them in line. So when you,
and I know, and I know, Gloria, that you've done some teachings as well recently on the history of racism, both in the nation, but also in the church. Are there any videos or anything that you can point us to for a longer kind of teaching that you have?
One that I have, well, I did something for Word on Fire that's not out yet, but
that was the one I was thinking about.
Yeah, that was a broader teaching about helping people walk through racism in America. And I think I did one class that used a specific example of a particular priest in Louisiana to help people understand what Black Catholics were dealing with, what this Black priest dealt with. And just as an example, I think Father maybe died in the last 3 to 5 years. He lived to be in his 90s. But anyway, one of the things that he would do, tell you about this Black priest, such an awesome guy, only Black priest in his diocese, Louisiana. He would not go uninvited if somebody was on their deathbed in the diocese where he was, because he felt that if he did, these people's souls would be imperiled, because he knew the kind of reaction people had to him as a Black priest. And he says, I would not go to somebody's deathbed uninvited because I did not want them, because of their reaction to me, to risk their eternal soul. Wow. But that ought to tell you the level of problem that we still have in the church in America. If a priest is saying, for the good of their soul, I cannot go uninvited if they're on their deathbed, because they need to know that it's a Black priest and be okay with it and want me there. Otherwise, the hatred and the racism that they would emit toward me as they're about to face their judgment would probably and could cut them off, send them to hell. And that's the kind of love he had for the people who hated him, that he would, for the good of their soul. It's heavy. It's heavy.
That's very heavy.
And you have to think, how does he not walk away from the priesthood?
Right. Yeah.
And instead sees these people as his children that he's supposed to care and love and help them get to heaven. So yeah.
And I'm glad, thank you, Jared, for posting that. And this might be of interest for you to check out as well, Gloria. CPMC has put out a 13th, the documentary on Netflix. They put out a study guide for that as a way of instructing on the history of racism and the criminal justice system.
Yes. And Slavery by Another Name talks about the abuse of law and the criminal justice system to re-enslave Black people. And so I thought that's why it also might be of interest to this group. Because for some people, I think when I said, oh, this would be a good thing to help people understand why we call it a criminal industrial complex,
Yes.
Because you could see how the beginnings of it, how it was built very early on and intentionally and how this labor was used by the state to build roads, and how the state profited off of these fake, ways to entrap and enslave free Black people.
And that's systemic racism.
Yes, it is.
Institutional racism over generations. I know I see it a lot in the state of Florida here as well. So, well, I know we're right at the end. I want to make one comment based on what both Gloria, what you said, and Barbara, and it just struck me as you all were talking and thinking about blindness. And I know we were talking the other day, Gloria, about blindness in the Gospels, and how so much blindness. And I really appreciated, Gloria, and I'm going to give this a lot more thought, the way that you spoke about the crucifix over the altar of a cathedral, because there is something about maybe what religious art, iconography, the crucifix can do, that no matter how much teaching we do, just goes in one ear and out the other. But who knows, in those quiet moments of prayer before Mass, and finally being able to see a man of color, and to see that something maybe that religious art and iconography can do, that no matter how much I preach or how much we teach, at times it can happen through art. So that's going to stick with me. So thank you so much, Gloria, for the time, your generosity, your witness, first and foremost, for our church, especially at this time, in this critical time. And I pray that that you have many more opportunities to share your witness and preach and teach us on how we can be a church of reconciliation, and a sign then to the nations, right, of reconciliation. So, and as always, we are so grateful for all of you and the ministries, so many of the ministries that are here on this call, in this town hall meeting, but also in the coalition, and so many of the lives that you touch and minister to. So we are always grateful for your presence with us, and we look forward to further conversations, and I think we're considering more conversations on racism over the next couple of months as well here at CPMC. So I pray that you all have a beautiful rest of your Thursday, and again, God's blessing on all of your ministries.
Thank you. God
Thank
bless.
you.
Bye-bye.